All right, U.S. midterm elections are less than 3 months away. President Donald Trump and the Republican Party has a lot riding on the upcoming election as they seek to keep control over both congressional houses.
But this will not be an easy task for Donald Trump, who is facing growing challenges globally as well as domestically. One is linked to the other. They're not separate. And the single most critical link between issues inside the House and outside is Iran. And here's why we say that.
Latest polls denote the lowest popularity Trump has seen in his ongoing presidential term. The Reuters Ipsos poll shows a 63% disapproval rating, and only 33% of Americans approve of his performance. The approval rating matches the lowest seen in December 2017 during his first term. The most prominent reason for this is that an overwhelming majority of Americans are concerned that the U.S. war with Iran will last a long time.
In fact, there are several statements from the Trump administration in the last 24 hours alone which substantiate growing concerns among voters in the United States. First, on Monday, Trump told Fox News in an interview that the United States will bomb Oman if it gets in the way of talks with Iran. The American president's concern here is the contested Strait of Hormuz, the maritime passage which both U.S. and Iran claim to have blocked and restricted for free navigation. First, remember on Monday this week, Donald Trump told Fox News in an interview that the United States will bomb Iran if it gets in the way of talks with Iran. The American president's concern here is the contested Strait of Hormuz, the maritime passage which both U.S. and Iran claim to have blocked and restricted for free navigation.
Well, just to correct my co-anchor, it's bomb Oman, not Iran.
Yes, that is right. He has said that, of course, it's Oman. And that, remember, the threat to Oman is linked to the country's ongoing talks with Iran for reaching an agreement on managing movement through Hormuz. Now, this agreement does not include United States. In fact, just hours ago, the American president shared this image on his Truth Social account, which shows the Strait of Hormuz marked as an American territory. Now, remember this. For our viewers, that the Hormuz is an international waterway. However, the strait has overlapping territorial waters of Iran as well as Oman.
Secondly, President Trump had dismissed any urgency in talks with Iran. Now, just minutes ago, Trump has taken a completely different stance, saying, and I quote, "There are no talks or conversations going on or scheduled with the Islamic Republic of Iran. This stalemate and uncertainty over talks also means that the impact of war on millions of people across the world will not wear off anytime soon. And this includes the millions of Americans who are also dealing with high gas prices." When Trump had campaigned for his second presidency, better cost of living and stronger economy were his main selling points, an America First approach that got him a decisive mandate in 2024 elections. But criticism is now mounting against him, and it goes beyond just unfulfilled promises.
Well, Democrats and critics have doubled down on the American president for dozing off during cabinet meetings and while attending important events. He faced backlash recently over one such video, but this one was different. In this moment, captured on camera on the 10th of August, Trump appears to doze off in the Oval Office. In the frame is a young woman standing right behind him. She is 26-year-old MAGA influencer Jamie Franklin. What happens next? Well, Franklin taps her hand against her stomach, and at the same time, Trump appears to jolt awake. This video has gone viral, with netizens speculating that she had been entrusted with an important task, and that is to subtly deliver an electric shock to the U.S. president if he fell asleep. They claimed that she was concealing a remote control in her stomach. Some even went on to the extent of calling her a zapper. However, the woman has responded to these claims. Reposting a tweet, she said, "I'm just pregnant, you weirdos."
Democrats say the U.S. president falling asleep on the job nearly every day is a national security crisis. Congresswoman Yasamin Ansari on X said, and I quote, "It doesn't get more dystopian than this, and Republicans in Congress continue to do nothing but enable this deranged old man's dangerous fantasies." During election campaigns and even after assuming presidency, the president repeatedly slammed his predecessor and called him by the name, Sleepy Joe Biden. The recent criticism has come as a full circle moment for President Trump in the run-up to the midterm elections slated for November.
All right, let's get a perspective on what's been happening within the United States vis-a-vis the Iran war and, of course, the midterm elections. We welcome Dr. Christina Ioana Dragomir. She's a political analyst who's joining us from New York at the moment. Good evening and welcome, Dr. Christina. Can I start by asking you what you make of, Donald Trump's stance on the midterm elections particularly? Has he already given up, saying that, look, the Republicans are going to lose? Because he's been making such statements such as, let's not talk about the cost of living crisis, I don't want to hear about it. And of course, his approval ratings have reduced as well.
Thank you very much for having me, and good evening to you, Eric and Shreya. So you are absolutely correct to say that President Donald Trump is facing a very low approval rating, which is of 33%. And this is a historically familiar trend. We have to remember that presidents who are in their second term, they tend to have a very low approval rating. So modern presidency oscillated between 30 and 50%. However, 33%, it's something low, even considering this historical trend. Only President Truman had this low of an approval rate, and that what led to was for the Democrat Party, the President Truman was a Democrat, to lose 55 seats in Congress. So definitely we are looking at a very tight and a very problematic approval rating decline for President Trump. However, what I want to bring to your viewers' attention is that when we say 30% of the approval rating, we are saying per total. But if we break it down between the Republicans and the Democrats, we see that the Republican constituents, the people who vote Republican in the United States, are still supporting President Trump. Not by as much as President Trump might have wanted. In March, his approval rating among the Republicans was 80%. Right now, it declined to 60%, but it's more than a half. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, it declined tremendously for the Democrats, which are at like a 10% approval rating because of this war.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Christina, let me ask you this. Let's talk about the optics now, because there has been a concern that has been raised against the president dozing off while in the presence of the press and in the presence of the public or in the presence of the world. And he's been calling Joe Biden, the former president, Sleepy Joe Biden. Do you think this is a concern, should be a concern, and how should it be addressed?
Of course, one's capacity to fulfill their job at the maximum capacity and to optimize their time in office, especially for the President of the United States, is tremendously important. However, what I want to also bring to your viewers' attention is that this kind of innuendo that is being played continuously on both presidents, President Trump right now and former President Biden, is a way to monopolize the discourse, to create certain images, and to propose their particular agenda. I think what is more important to think about is the president's current foreign affairs agenda, because according to the Constitution, what we see is that President Trump has a lot of freedom to work his foreign policy agenda. He has the power to declare war, to command troops on the ground, and so on and so forth. And those are really important points that constitutionally he is allowed to do. And as we see, he's marching on this, probably preparing his legacy, preparing his history, which is also quite interestingly typical of presidents into their second term.
All right, let's wait and see how this really pans out for Donald Trump and the Republicans. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Christina Ioana Dragomir, for joining us on WION and sharing your perspective.
My pleasure. Have a good evening.